What's up guys, Andre here, bringing you our Splatoon Q&A, where we answer your questions. Now we've already covered a lot about the game with our preview and our discussion videos, so if you haven't seen those already, please go check them out because there's a lot of stuff in there that we won't be covering here. With that said, there are some things that we weren't able to cover, and that's where you guys come in. And you sent in a ton of questions, far more than I can answer here because I don't have time to. Now on top of that, a lot of the questions I'm not able to answer, whether it's because I didn't see it myself, or I can't talk about it. So if there's a question you really wanted to have answered and I didn't address it here, that's probably because I either don't know the answer or I can't talk about it. With that said, let's get started going through the questions that I can answer. And first up we have Julio, 332425, whatever number, and he asks, can you aim using only the right stick, or is motion controls mandatory? I usually like to turn off the gyro controls if I can. So, yes, you can aim only using the right stick if you want. Conversely, you can also aim only using the gyro controls if you want. With that said, I don't know if there's an option to turn them on or off at will. There probably is, but I don't know for sure. What I can say is when you're playing the game, you can, just switch between the two freely. And that's what I did. I would use the right stick to do more broader movements, and I would use the motion controls for more minute, smaller movements, more twitch-based movements, and it works really well. I often found myself forgetting which controller I was even using at that time. Like, it's seamless between the two. Mario Single Player asks, could you elaborate more on the customization? You said you won't be able to carry over your customization from single player to multiplayer. So does that mean you'll have two different currencies for the two modes? Okay. I'm glad you asked this, but I wanted to address this. But I actually had to go back and update our preview. But I did make a slight mistake in the preview. So what I said was, in the stores, when you buy the equipment from the stores, like your clothing and weapons and whatnot, I said that would only apply to the single player. That was a mistake. It applies only to the multiplayer. As for single player customization, we actually don't know anything about it. Nintendo hasn't talked about it, and when I clarified with them how it worked, they specified that, yeah, they hadn't mentioned anything about that yet. So, with that said, Nintendo did stress to us at the event that it is treating the single player and multiplayer pretty much independently of one another. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. TGF the Great asks, do you think it needs voice chat? As I talked about in the discussion, I don't think it needs voice chat. It is unfortunate that it's not there. I think it'd be better with it, at least for playing with your friends. But I don't think it needs it. I had fun with it at the event, minus the voice chat, even though, granted, we could talk to the people around us, but we usually didn't. So, yeah, it would be better with it. I don't think it needs it, but it'd be nice. Some Nerd in Disguise asks, release date? All we know right now is May. That's all Nintendo would tell us at the event. I have a feeling we'll get a release date sooner than later, especially with the supposed, leaked European date, I believe, which is like late May, May 29th or something. Somewhere around there. So yeah, somewhere in May is all we know for sure. Abby Hired asks, did each level that you played feel short in nature? The level 5 single player video seems short in my eyes. Also, how is the dialogue with the characters you interact with, like the shopkeepers and the old inkling in the sewers? Okay, so that's a two-parter question there. So I was going to say, just go watch our gameplay videos. You can see exactly how long the levels are. Then I realized Nintendo made it, we could only show off a minute long, or a minute of footage at a time. So that would not be a good answer. With that said, looking at our gameplay videos, the levels are on average, I would say 4 to 7 minutes or so in general. And it does depend on the level. And now some of the gameplay clips you're seeing, such as the level 5 gameplay video, were taken from my second time playing the level. So I already had some idea of what to do. And I actually was trying to haul through them as fast as possible in order to, because I knew I wanted to show off as much as possible in that minute-long span. But at this point, I wouldn't be too concerned about it, especially because those levels were earlier in the game. So they may not be, they may not indicate how, how long levels later in the game might be. Okay, and then Gamer is asking, is there a kill cam? Not really. The only thing that happens when you die is a camera will follow the person that killed you, like it'll follow them around. That's basically it. So, Tom Johnson asks, what's the native resolution of the game? That is a good question. So I can't answer that for certain, but here's what I can say. So the capture hardware I use automatically defaults to whatever setting the system is outputting. So in this case, it defaulted to 720p 60 frames per second. Now what that tells us is that the Wii U's at the event were outputting that exact same resolution, so 720p 60 frames per second. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the game isn't running at it, because Nintendo could have, for whatever reason, set the Wii U's to that resolution instead of having the game, instead of using whatever the game was running at. With that said, I think it's a pretty good idea that the game is actually running at that same resolution, which means 720p 60 frames per second. And that's something we've seen from a lot of Nintendo games at this point. So I think it's a safe bet to assume that is the case. As for the frame rate, I did double check too that it is in fact 60 frames per second, and it is. It's a straight up 60 frames per second. Which is even slightly better than Mario Kart, because Mario Kart had this weird quirk where it would duplicate a single frame every second, and Splatoon does not do that, so that's good news. Alright, moving on, Mark Nutt asks, has this preview made you more or less excited for the game? It seems like the tone of voice for people who went to this event are less excited than they were going in. For me, I had a really good time with it. I would say I'm more excited now than it was before, and I was pretty interested before, although back then I would say it's more curiosity, and now that some of those questions have finally been answered, I'm actually really intrigued, or I was really happy with what I saw. So I want to play more of it, and I am more excited now than I was before. So with that said, who knows how the full game is going to turn out for real, but I like what I saw. I liked what I saw. Okay, moving on, Toast Hatter asks, do you think there are any more modes, and if so, what do you think they will be? I think it's a safe bet there will be more modes. We've had some hints of that before. And on top of that, when Nintendo was describing like the ranked battles and the non-ranked battles, it did sound like that, by the fact that they are drawing that distinction, instead of just going by the name of the modes themselves, like Splat Zones and Turf War, I think it's a safe bet to assume there probably will be more. But I have no knowledge of that, so I'm just giving you my impressions from the event. So I can't say for sure either way. The Orchidork asks, how does a paintbrush weapon work? Great question, no idea, because it wasn't at the event. It was not playable, could not tell you. The best bet would be to go check out Derek's awesome Splatoon analysis, where I think he did touch on that a little bit, based on what we've seen. Beyond that, I have no more information. Darkstar DX asks, how does a sniper gun feel? Was it hard to use? Okay, so by the sniper gun, he means the charged up, I forget the name of it offhand. I think there's a couple different variants of it, but it's whatever weapon had the charged thing in the name. It's different. I wasn't a huge fan of it at the event, only because in order for it to be effective, you do have to charge it, and I don't like that. Like, I'm more of a twitch, impulsive shooter, so I don't like that I have to plan my shots in advance or track someone and then shoot. I don't know. I'll probably like it more once I get more used to it. At the event, everything is pretty hectic. So otherwise, like if you get used to it, I'm sure it's a fine weapon. It seems like it could be definitely useful in Splat Zones, especially. I don't know, not so much a Turf War, because it felt like it took longer to get the same amount of ink out as it would with another weapon. I don't know, I could be off base there. But with Turf Wars, I could definitely see there being merit to it. But that inherent delay did make it feel a little bit odd. So that's my only complaint about it, or that's my main issue with it. Next up, the Mad Mask of Majora asks, how long is the single player and how is it structured? And by structured, I mean, is there a central hub or is it a fully linear progression akin to other shooters? So unfortunately, I wasn't able to show off any of Octo Valley, which is a central hub of the single-player campaign, but I can't talk about it. So yeah, so Octo Valley is effectively a hub. That's where you go to not only find the levels, but also to teleport between them. So yeah, in order to find the level, you actually have to spray it with ink. And then that makes it accessible, it makes it visible and accessible forever from that point. You don't have to go spray with ink every time you want to access it. So in that sense, it definitely feels a little bit open, because you can go around, like there's some exploring to it. After that point, I asked a Nintendo rep there, and it did sound like the levels actually are non-linear within each given area. So it seems like the levels come in groups, and within that group, it does sound like they will be non-linear. You can go about them in any order, or the order you find them in at least. Beyond that, though, I couldn't tell you much about it. We only saw the area with the first 8 levels, and within them you could freely hop between them. You could freely either run between them, or you could freely hop between them by tapping them on the gamepad, it looked like. So yeah, there you go. Hyperbeam asks, Splatoon Inklings for Smash Bros. 5? Dude, I think that would be awesome. They have such a unique play style. They would be such a fantastic Smash character, I think. It would probably be tricky to make them work, but they would feel so distinct, and I would love if they could somehow incorporate those mechanics into Smash Brothers. That would be amazing. Lime Gamer asks, is the game voice acted? So no, there is no actual voice acting in the game. You can actually hear a little bit of it in our gameplay videos, or you can hear the captain talking, and that's how all the characters talk in the game. It's a very much Banjo-Kazooie-like gibberish. Master XXX Tamer asks, will there be other ranked matches, like Team Deathmatch? You know, again, I couldn't tell you. I can only tell you what the rep said. I mean, I think the fact that as I said before, that there is its own ranked match section, it sounds like. I'm guessing there is probably a little bit more to it, but that's only my own conjecture. Eric Chiang asks, what determines the color of the ink? For multiplayer, it's random. And I think there's a question coming up here for single player, so I'll hold off on answering that for a second. Super Conan, I guess. What is your favorite level of Splatoon so far, and why is it your favorite level? I think my favorite level might be the Geyser one. I think that was level 3? I might be mistaken on that. It's a one where you activate these geysers and they shoot you really high. I just love that. I thought it was really cool, and how you can use them as like a barrier to the enemy projectiles, or you can ride them up to get above the enemy, shoot them from above. I thought it was fun, and I just loved how they looked. Like the ink in the game in general just has a great like feel and look, and like it feels like it has substance, and that carries over with the ink spouts. So that's partially why I like the level. Twilight Link 95 asks, do you get to choose your ink color in single player, or is it decided by the game? Good question. So as far as I can tell, you don't actually choose it. Instead, it seems to be determined by the level. Because each level has like a little graphic associated with it, and in that graphic, it actually shows you the ink color that you'll be using. Or rather, it shows like a picture of the level with the ink color you'll be using. So what happens is, when you exit a level, you continue to use the ink color that you were using in the previous level. But once you enter a new level, then you'll transform into, or then your ink color will change into the new ink color for that level. So there you go. Nintendo Roy asks, are there any maps in the game, or any single player maps you can use in the multiplayer mode? Good question. I don't know for sure. There is a one map from the 8th mission, I believe, from Splatoon single player that looks like it could lend itself well to multiplayer. But beyond that, I don't know. Everything we saw at the event did seem to be completely separate. So, the multiplayer maps, we only saw 3 of them, and they were their own thing. And then we saw 4 single player levels, and they were their own thing. So, I don't know for sure. Aaron Miller asks, is the camera a bit sensitive? I saw that in your level videos that you had trouble getting a precise shot. That probably was just more me being really tired at this event. I had almost no sleep the night before. So I wouldn't say it's too sensitive. I thought the controls felt great, or the camera controls felt great. If it seems sensitive, it's probably just me, either messing around or just being bad at it. So, at this point in time, I would say they felt good, but, we'll see how I feel for real, once the full game comes out. Next up, the Godly Shy Guy asks, does Splatoon feel like a game where you can develop actual strategies? Based on the footage, the game seems almost too chaotic for any real strategy. It's too early to say for sure. I think Turf or Splat Zones definitely has potential for strategies to be developed. There definitely did seem to be a fair amount of depth to that mode. Turf War, that's a little harder to say. I'm sure you can develop strategies. I'm confident you can. I'm not sure how far that'll extend. That mode did feel pretty chaotic, which is part of the charm. It's something I'm gonna have to play more to say for sure, though. But I do think there is definitely potential there. I'm just not sure how deep it goes yet, so we'll see for sure. Once the game comes out. Let's see. I think the Golly Shy Guy asks another question, unless I made a mistake here. He asks, what is the purpose of the caviar or currency you get in a single player campaign? So yeah, the little caviar, little fish egg things you find. That's what you use to buy the stuff in the stores. Like we've seen 4 different shops, as of now. That's what you use to buy the stuff in them. Dilama Dukes asks, did the use of special weapons, specifically the missile and the whaler, make the ranked territory mode feel unbalanced in any way? From the video, I can see how a team could dominate by spamming their special weapons. Were there any weapons in any of the modes that felt overpowered? So again, too early to say for sure, but I don't think they felt overpowered. I mean, they are very strong, but unlike the conventional, Turf War modes or conventional King of the Hill, the thing with Splatoon is you don't actually have to be in a territory to hold it down. You can hold it down from being, you know, nearby, or I mean, you don't have to be in it to get control of it. So that's what makes it feel, you know, pretty distinct, and that's why I don't think it's a concern, because those weapons, you know, they do have a limited radius, you know, granted a big one. So you don't actually have to be, I mean, you can easily get outside that radius while holding down the fort. So I'm not too concerned about it, and you know, the people on defense too, or rather on offense, or you know, the people on either side can use the same weapons as the other side. So it seems to be a fairly balanced mode. Andrew asks, will there be ranked turf wars? Nintendo didn't say anything at the event. I mean, it's possible, but I don't know. I mean, they didn't mention it at all, so I'm inclined to say no, but you know, we don't know for sure. Gamer Prince asks, can you jump without being in squid form? Yes, you can. I don't think it's quite as good because you're not going as fast, but you can indeed. Brandon asks, can you change the difficulty of the single player mode to a harder or easier difficulty? So everything I saw was from already within the context of single player campaign, and from that perspective I can tell you that I didn't see any option to change the levels. Like, you hop into a level and that's it. So if there's any difficulty changing going on, it would probably be before you enter the campaign. Although I wouldn't hold your breath, because Nintendo games rarely have difficulty selects. Next up, 57 Stewie asks, what button do you press to turn into a squid? That's the left shoulder button, or sorry, left trigger. So yeah, just pressing left trigger turns you into a squid. It works super well. Like, it feels really natural. Your finger's naturally there. It all works really well. Darth Tinkerbell asks, how long does the game of Turf War or Splat Zone last? Okay, so Turf War, based on all the games we played at the event, they were always 3 minutes long. So it's a straight up 3 minutes and that's it. For Splat Zone, that's a little bit different, because that can end, that ends based on when a team wins, which at a minimum is 100 seconds. So roughly about 2 minutes or so for a team to win, assuming they get a straight victory, which usually isn't the case. It usually switches control multiple times, which extends the amount of, or the length of the battle. With that said, there is a maximum time limit based on the preview event, and that is 5 minutes. So yeah, so 3 minutes max for Turf War, 5 minutes max for Splat Zones. Court Hyrule Smasher asks, I would like to know how long is the load time in this game? Is it noticeable? The load time across the board is pretty much great. I actually checked our video looking at it, and it was no more than 3 seconds pretty much across the board. It was just under 3 seconds for single player missions and multiplayer. The only time it was slightly over 3 seconds was when you were leaving a single player mission and going back to the hub, when it was really like 3.5 seconds. So it is not a concern at all. It seemed great. Now granted, I don't know what the initial start time loading time is, or initial starting up the game loading time is, but based on what we've seen, I'm not too worried. Next up, Blue Light asks, is there any way to change weapons during a match? Nope, what you choose going in is what you're stuck with, so choose wisely. Finally, Steve Anderson asks, are you, Andre, as awesome as you say you are? Well, I don't think I've ever said I'm awesome, so I guess I'm exactly as awesome as I've said I am, which isn't anything at all. Alright, and that wraps up our Splatoon Q&A, so thanks guys for asking all those great questions. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more Splatoon as we get closer to its release. And of course, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain if you haven't already. There are links to them in the description below. It's a good way to keep updating everything you post. And with that, we're done. So thanks for watching, and bye.